Good morning, my friends. Now 6 o'clock, Chad here. Trailblazers back in action tonight. They'll meet the Spurs in San Antonio. Tip-off is scheduled for 5. Chris Burkhart will have game day starting at 3 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. It's presented by Coors Light. Shaden Sharp has been upgraded to questionable. Could make his season debut coming off the labral injury. Our Trailblazers insider Sean Highkin will join the show this morning at 8:20. The Oregon Ducks will continue their pursuit of an unbeaten season. They host Maryland Saturday at 4. It's on Big Ten Network. Ducks favored by 25. Oregon State's coming off a bye. They'll host San Jose State. That kickoff scheduled for 12:30. Pregame at 10:30. It will be on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KEX. You can watch on the CW Network. Got a good game on NFL Prime tonight. That kickoff at 5:15. Bengals at Ravens. And Baltimore right now favored by 3. Rip City Mornings coming up next. All right, good morning, my friends. Chad Doing here, along with Brenden Slaughter. Our Trailblazers insider, Sean Highkin, will join the show coming up at 8:20, and we'll talk about a variety of different things. He'll give us an update on Shaden Sharp and Matisse Thybulle. Robert Williams III, the other injured Trailblazer, was cleared to play a couple of nights ago. He did not get into action against the Pelicans, but he's expected to probably give it a go tonight. So that's good news. And then Shaden Sharp, was upgraded to questionable. So there's a good chance he could play. And that's very good news for the Portland Trailblazers, who, as we mentioned yesterday, right, what are their ultimate goals right now? Number one is talent acquisition. Joe Cronin's talked about this a lot, where they're nowhere near where they want to be in terms of talent. So they're constantly looking for ways to add talent through draft picks or young assets, young players, guys like Denny Avdia. And then also after that, it's about development. And with that development piece of, continuing to coach guys up and work with them, they need to identify which of their players that are on the roster right now will be a part of the core moving forward. And that's a bit of a process. And the issue, or the biggest issue last year, is it was so many guys who got hurt in and out of the lineup and no continuity within that lineup. They didn't really get the amount of data that they would have liked to really make a full evaluation of what they've got. And they need to identify which players are going to be a part of the core moving forward so that they know which chess pieces to move around. And that's not an easy process, but that's what they're going through right now. So we get a chance now to watch some of the young players. Shaden Sharp being on the floor and getting an opportunity to play is going to be critical. And not only that, but he and Scoot getting a chance to play together is going to be critical. So they can get that data that they need. Now, from people I have heard from and what I've been told, the team feels pretty good about what they have in Shaden Sharp in terms of his work, the improvements that he's made, some of the data they've got on games he has played in, but it's been a while since he played. So it'll be nice for him to get back on the floor. And in terms of the rebuild or retool or whatever word you want to use to describe what they're doing right now, this much I do know. They do need to acquire more, young talent, draft picks, young pieces, but they also need the two guys that they drafted in the first round, Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson, to hit. If you want this turnaround to be a much quicker process, because they invested so much in both those guys, it's important that they play and they get a chance to continue to develop, and then we can see what that's all about. And then also, I guess the other big question will be, how is Chauncey Billups going to handle the rotation with Shaden Sharp now back in the mix? Obviously, he's not going to start right away, but as he continues to play and gets himself back into shape, and then when he's ready to take on a full load, how's that going to look? And what do you do? What I do like about Scoot right now in his role, and we'll talk about this with Sean coming up at 8:20, he's coming off the bench. So there's a couple of things that are good there. One, it takes some of the pressure off of him. There's a lot of pressure on a guy taking number 3 overall, and he's had his struggles thus far in his career. So he takes some of the pressure off, but also when he comes into the game, he's not going up against the other team's, top line point guard, shooting guard, dealing with their backcourt. So it just allows him to be in a position to where He can play a little bit better, but also when he comes in the game, if he's not on the floor with Ant, he can have the ball in his hands, be the primary handler, facilitator, and be able to direct the offense. And that's good for him. In fact, for both guys, Ant's better when he's in the game with the ball in his hands, and Scoot being like Ant and being more of a traditional point guard, much better with the ball in his hands. So you put both guys in a position to succeed. My guess will be that with where we're at in the season right now, Chauncey's not going to change around the starting lineup. He'll continue to go with Ant, which makes sense because he's your best player on the team, more than likely. And you got Tamani, who, it makes sense to have him at guard because you have more size. He's a terrific defender, and you have less weakness defensively on the floor. Plus, with the addition of Avia and with Aiton and Grant and the rest of the crew, you've got a much longer, more athletic team that is just more versatile than what we've seen in the past. And that's really cool the way they've kind of changed around the lineup, and now you got more length out there. So that's where we're at. And Shaden Sharp could make his debut tonight. Matisse Thybulle still going through the process of, I think they call it right knee maintenance. So he's going to be back fairly soon. And, then you'll have a full complement of players. The one thing that Billups is experiencing right now that he did not have last year is continuity. They've had the same starting five in each and every game this year. Last year it was a constant shuffling of players with this lineup and that lineup. And I'm sure that Billups got really tired of hearing from the trainers. So it was just kind of messy, kind of yucky out there. So now they got some continuity. They've got different players to choose from. And then the other issue, too, with guys returning is what does that mean for the other young players who have had a chance to play? Guys like Ryan Rupert, does that mean they go back to the bench? See, it's kind of a weird setup right now because you have young players that you want to get on the floor to develop, but you have established veterans who are the better players who should be getting the minutes based on their abilities and their seniority. And you have a head coach that would prefer to win games right now because he suffered through multiple seasons of losses and teams that were focusing on draft position. And then you have a front office that might be more concerned about draft position with the upcoming draft being so loaded in talent. So I don't know. It's kind of a different situation right now, but it's early in the season and you've got to give your vets, your guys, a chance to go out there and showcase what they can do. And so that's what I'm going to watch for. Player development, and I'm excited to see Shaden Sharp. He's an exciting player to watch. And, frankly, for the Trailblazers, last couple of years, not a lot of entertaining basketball on the floor because of the young guys who are playing. Win, lose, or draw, I just want to be entertained. I'm sure that's the same with you, right? And we've gotten a few of those games this year where the Trailblazers have, been exciting. They've had some big comebacks. There's been some really good quarters. So at least it's been an entertaining brand of basketball. So that tip-off's coming up tonight at 5. Also, anytime you could tune in and watch Wemby play, I'm a big fan of that. The guy's amazing. I still look at him and I'm like, how does a guy that tall, built the way that he is, move so effortlessly around the floor and shoot the three so easily and be able to rim protect and operate defensively and run up and down the floor? It's unique. I haven't seen too many players like Wemby based on size and length who can move around and do the things that he does. And I feel the same way about Chet Holmgren. I really thought that taking him in the top, 2 or 3 of the draft was crazy because I thought he was going to be a bust. And he's one of those players that I couldn't have been more wrong about. I watch him on the floor now. He's like Wemby from the standpoint that he's really lanky and not exactly big. Light of foot is what it looks like to me. But yet he's strong and he's a good shot blocker and he's got foot speed to be able to get out and defend at the three-point line. I didn't think that was possible. So Wemby and Chet, those are kind of unicorns, but they're the future NBA big, like the modern NBA big, different from the guys that, we grew up with. And for those of you in my age bracket, you know what I'm talking about, the traditional low post, back to the basket type center, guys like, Hakeem and Shaq and Patrick Ewing and, the list goes on and on and on. But now it's a totally different game. And teams are putting up threes at an alarming rate. It's a different game, and we got some, new age guys out there. But Shaden Sharp's fun to watch, and I'm excited to see, what he looks like getting back on the floor this year. And for Robert Williams, just him being on the floor, showcasing that he's healthy. My guess would be that he'll be one of those players that, Joe Cronin will have opportunities around the league to be able to deal so he can get some, draft picks back or whatever it is that they're looking for, because there'll be a veteran team out there or a team that's in pursuit of, making a deep playoff run. Robert Williams, I don't know how long he's going to be in Portland, but there'll be teams out there that have interest in him. Good player, good defensive player, has been in the playoffs, has experience, and, when he's healthy, can be a really key part of your team. So that's kind of where we're at there. And that tip-off will be at 5, and Chris Burkhardt will have game day coming up at 3. College football this weekend, the Oregon Ducks are going to host Maryland. I don't see that being an issue for Oregon as they continue their pursuit of a perfect season. They're going to finish up the season against Washington after a bye. They still have to go to Wisconsin. I don't see them losing, but most teams don't go unbeaten. So if they're going to lose a game, it would probably be the Wisconsin game. But as we pointed out when the initial rankings came out, and I was talking to a guy I know and someone who's close to the Oregon program last night, and he agrees. Right now, the most important thing is just to get into the Big Ten title game and win that game and then get your bye. And he did say he was at the Georgia-Texas game a few weeks ago, and he said he was thoroughly impressed with the Georgia defensive line and what they were able to do against Texas. That their offense didn't even play that well, but the defensive line performance was so dominant in what they were able to do up front that he realizes that that's going to be, quite the challenge for the Ducks. And then right now, that's the only team I look at where I'm like, I don't know. That's not too many teams match up well with what they have in the interior. And it's funny because if you look at the recruiting, most of the top defensive linemen are picking Georgia right now. I know that's no surprise, but the amount of talent that they have access to down there in the Southeast at the line of scrimmage, especially on defense, is impressive. And as a state, Georgia is really pumping out some terrific athletes right now. So Oregon's in a great spot. And the biggest game this weekend that you're going to keep an eye on, especially with the new batch of rankings that are coming up, is that LSU-Alabama game. And remember, we've talked about this where each weekend now we're getting multiple games that we can sit down and watch that have playoff implications. 4:30, I think it's going to be on ABC. It's Bama and LSU, number 11 against number 15. Alabama at LSU. The reason why this game's significant, both teams right now 6-2 on the year, and LSU has 1 conference loss. Bama has 2 conference losses, losing to Vanderbilt and Tennessee. But the loser of this game's done. The loser of this game will not gain access to the playoff, so the winner will move on. The loser is out of the playoff mix, and that's just something to remember when you watch some of these games. The other big games that are on tap with playoff implications to keep an eye on, BYU, undefeated, 8-0. They're ranked 9th. They're at Utah. Now, Utah's having a down year because the injuries have once again bitten them pretty bad, but it's a rivalry game, and BYU's been living dangerously in multiple games this year. They're favored by 3.5. BYU right now in command of their position in the Big 12, and obviously in a great spot to potentially get to the playoff, but that's going to be a tough one for them. And then after that, they still have to go to ASU and take on the Sun Devils, who are rejuvenated under Kenny Dillingham. They're 6-2 on the year. Boise State hosts Nevada. That shouldn't be an issue for them. Washington will travel to Penn State. The Nittany Lions ranked 6th, still alive for an at-large berth without question. But now their access to the Big Ten title game seems almost impossible with both Indiana and Oregon being unbeaten. And there you have it. That's what we're looking at this weekend. All right, Sean Highkin coming up at 8:20. We'll get to some NFL. We're going to hear from Tom Brady talking about the Detroit Lions and what makes them so tough and how you need to go about playing them to have a chance to win. Mike Gundy is, being Mike Gundy. We'll get to that. So I appreciate your time. Good morning. Chad doing Rip City Mornings here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, one thing I'm certain of, it's great to have John Morant back on the floor after missing quite a bit of time last year with an injury. He's back, and we need more of this in the NBA. I'm telling you, it's good for the league. We need more bitter rivalries. We need guys who don't really like each other. I like it when you get guys on the floor who are really competitive, who don't really care about each other and want to go at one another. And John Morant, the Lakers got hammered last night in Memphis, and I know most of you enjoy that. Anytime the Lakers go down or get hammered, it's terrific. They got off to a fast start, and now they're in a bit of a slide. They got hammered by 17, 131 to 114. And the Lakers, as I mentioned, got off to a fast start, and Anthony Davis was playing well, but now he's nicked up, and they've dropped uh, four of their last five games, including last night's loss to Memphis. But John Morant was a little salty after the game. Take a listen to this exchange with reporters. And this is what we need. We need more players who are willing to say, look, I don't like that team. I don't like that team. I'm not going to take crap from anyone. I don't care. Take a listen to John Morant. Salty. All right, good. Give me more of that, please. I love that competitive fire, and I love guys who don't kiss the other team's ass. The problem is in the NBA now, and this happens across sports, these players, they grow up around one another. They play against each other in AAU ball. So a lot of them are friends. Maybe they grew up in the same area, but they all know each other. A lot of them have the same agents. And so when you get on the floor, it's just not as contentious as it used to be when I was younger. So these are the type of things that can create good rivalries where players are like, look, I don't like that team. I want to take them out. I don't like the fact they knocked us out of the playoffs. What that tells me there, and when I hear that from a guy like John, I'm like, good, that guy cares. He wants a piece of their ass. And I love that. I mean, that's sign me up for that. What I don't want are guys making out before games, patting each other on the butt, and just going out there to collect their paycheck. That stuff drives me crazy. I mean, back when I was younger, and look, I'm not being, bark at the clouds guy or anything like that, but, guys would take the floor and they'd look to kill each other. Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas were the closest of friends. But when they were meeting in the finals, they were trying to destroy one another. And it would get very contentious, very, very bitter on the floor. And I like that. I mean, that's sign me up for that. And also the Lakers, we'll see how things continue to play out. But a lot of these teams with aging rosters or teams that don't have a lot of 3-point shooting depth, we'll see how that continues to play out. But in the Western Conference right now, I mean, I think we know which team right now is head and shoulders above the rest, and that's Oklahoma City. They look incredibly dynamic. They're young, they're athletic, and they can hit you in a bunch of different ways. And right now, the three teams atop the West are Phoenix, Oklahoma City, and Golden State. Warriors got a win at Boston last night. I like the way they're playing right now, and we'll see how sustainable that is with their roster. I know that Oklahoma City's legit. We'll just see how things continue to play out. But John Morant, he's unique too. We're talking about Wemby and Chet being kind of the new age bigs in the NBA with their skill sets and the way they can play. Guys who can step back at that size and shoot the three, who can get out and defend the 3-point line, defend the pick and roll, shot blockers, can do a little bit of everything, get up and down the floor. John Morant, for being a point guard, unique because he's very athletic, a physical type player for a younger guy, but he attacks the rim with absolute fearlessness. And he's probably going to get himself hurt doing it, but man, it's so much fun to watch. Explosive. And off the bounce, that first step, good luck trying to stop him. He is a freak, a real freak. And if he can continue to improve with his outside shot, then he becomes unstoppable. And that's why when you watch Steph Curry last night, I mean, the way he's been able to develop, the shot's always been there. Terrific shooter, phenomenal shooter. But as time has gone on, like great players do, they add different things to their game. Steph Curry's now a guy where if you try to roll up on him to contest out at the 3-point line, he can put the ball on the floor and just drive right by you. Right by you. And that's what good players do. They continue to add. So give me more rivalries like this and guys willing to call each other out. And I just think that makes for a good contest. That's the type of basketball I like. I mean, guys going after one another. I'm not talking about physically going after one another, but guys are like, look, I don't like that team, and we're here to take them out. That makes for good sport, for good rivalry. And John Morant, I think, is respected around the league from the simple fact that he won't back down. I think guys like players who compete like that. It's why Russell Westbrook, we criticize him and make fun of him because he's kind of goofy sometimes. And he complains about people who make fun of his name or whatever. And I do think that's kind of funny because he taunts fans, but then he gets upset when they call him Westbrick, which is weird to me. It's like, hey, Russ, if you don't taunt fans in the opposing team's building, in their arena, they might not come at you the way that they do. So if you're going to do that, that's fine. You can talk to the fans. You can do whatever you want, but don't be surprised when they start yelling things at you and start saying Westbrick because they know it's going to get under your skin. They know it drives you crazy. So don't show it. But they respect Russ because of the way he plays. He's always going at a different level. He's got a different octane. So they respect the way he competes. Now, he'll shoot you out of a game on any given night because he just likes to do that. You turn him into a volume shooter, he can just be brutal. But his competition, the way he gets out there and gets up and down the floor and he's willing to run and push the tempo and, he competes at a high level, like those are the type of teammates you like to have. One other side note, Bob Costas is going to shut it down. And how long has he been doing this? Like 44 years? But this is what I respect about Bob. He's been one of the greatest broadcasters, and he's right up there in the elite level with guys like Al Michaels. I mean, take your pick. All the guys you grew up with. We're talking about elite broadcasters who can do all sports. And I've heard Bob Costas on World Series games, NBA final games. He's called NFL games working for the network. Like, this is about as good as it gets. Bob Costas, top notch, but he no longer believes he can live up to the standard and be able to perform the way that he wants, so he's going to bow out. Let's take a listen to Bob. It's pretty impressive. And I like the way he put that. I hadn't thought of it like that. But if you're an athlete, let's use a good example here. Michael Jordan, who I consider to be the greatest of all time. Like Bob said, you can go back to Basketball Reference or, Baseball Reference and look at a player's career, and you can see the highlights, the longevity, the dominance of their career. And it's easy to see, and you can point to the numbers. But as a broadcaster, no one has a broadcaster reference where you can go back and see the longevity of someone's career and how great they were on the call. They only remember you for the last game that you called. And obviously, as you age as a broadcaster, just like anything else, you're not going to be at the top of your game at that level, like Bob Costas. It's like Michael Jordan. When we talk about Michael Jordan, or when I say MJ, the things that come to your mind are 6 championships, 2 three-peats, and the final shot against Utah where he walks out the floor, the Bulls win it, and he gets a 6th championship. But the things that don't come to mind were at the end of his career in Washington where he was older and not the same player. But we don't even think about that because we just remember him for the greatness with the Chicago Bulls. So I find that very interesting. But Bob Costas is right up there at the top. It's like Al Michaels. He's on Prime doing it with Kirk Herbstreit. And I love Kirk Herbstreit. I think he does a great job. And Al Michaels, I've been listening to him my whole life. He's not the same at this point in time in his life right now. Not as sharp, but you would expect that because he's older. But he's still really, really good. He can still go out there and call a very good game. And I like Al. And I think people that criticize him should back the F up. That's what I think about that because Al Michaels is a legend, Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats. You can make an argument he's the greatest broadcaster of all time. Vin Scully was not the same that he was at the end of his career, but still doing it at a very high level. And I understand what Bob's saying is that he didn't want to just continue to stick around or continue to call games just to pull a paycheck if the quality of broadcast was not there. And I respect that because in athletes, a lot of guys will do that too, where they'll step away. Not many, but some will step away at a certain point in time because they know that they're not going to be able to uphold the standard at what they once did. It's like Peyton Manning. He won the Super Bowl in his final year in 2015, but with the injuries and his body starting to break down, he didn't play at the same level. He wasn't the same guy. And those guys have a lot of pride, and they respect the game, and they don't want to go out there and cheat themselves. And if they can't do it at the same level that they used to, their standard, and for the greats, it's a really high standard. They're like, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'll just shut it down. So now we move forward and continue to usher in new broadcasters. And that's why I'm anxious to see how things develop with Tom Brady as an analyst. Kevin Burkhardt does a really good job with him. I think Buck and Aikman are at the height of their powers right now doing Monday Night Football. So I'm enjoying some of the broadcasters. And broadcasters are important to me. I'm sure they are to you because they're kind of our connection point to the games and the teams that we love, whether it be radio or TV or whatever. And that's kind of how I look at that. And Bob Costas has been there. My favorite Bob Costas moments were probably in the World Series when he was calling games with Bob Uecker. Bob Uecker's terrific, longtime broadcaster, actor. He does everything with the Brewers. But he was doing network games with Bob Costas on NBC back in the late 90s. And those two guys, with their baseball knowledge and the connection, the chemistry they had, I thought was solid. So there you go. I respect that, Bob Costas. If you can't hold the standard that you have for yourself, then you walk away. You step away. Now, one thing I'm going to get to coming up later in the show, I'll probably do this at 7. I've got my midseason NFL awards. I'll take a look at MVP, Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. And, of course, that could change between now and the end of the season. But I think that the league, we're starting to have more definition in terms of the contenders and the pretenders right now. But I'm very impressed with a few guys in particular I'll get to coming up at 7 o'clock. But we have a couple of critical games this weekend, games that are going to be very important and starting to determine who is who. The Lions are going to be at the Texans on Sunday Night Football. The Lions right now are 7-1. The Texans, who have been a little beat up with injuries, are at 6-3. Now, for the Texans, it's a critical game because they're trying to keep pace with the 3 best teams in the AFC right now in Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo. And the Texans, if they get this win, I think it will help them as they continue to move forward. I think the Texans are one of those teams where they're not at the level right now as those 3 teams I just mentioned at the top of the conference, but with some of their skill position players, their quarterback and C.J. Stroud, their coach DeMeco Ryans, I know that they can be a very dangerous team. We saw that in the postseason last year where they just obliterated the Browns and then for a half of football played Baltimore tough in their crib in the divisional round. but I know the Texans are one of those teams that could be dangerous. But this is going to be a big game. But for the Lions right now, I look at the Lions very simply. They have a mission basically from God to get home field advantage. They're playing at a very high level, and they're the one team I look at right now where I think they're probably the best team in the league. I know Kansas City's undefeated. I know they've won back-to-back championships, but as of right now, I think the Lions are the best team of football. Top down. Love their offensive line. They have an identity. They know who they are, and they're getting MVP-type play from Jared Goff. And with their speed, here's why home field's so important for them. In that dome on the turf, they're nearly impossible to stop. And most teams can't match up with their speed, and they're so good at hitting you in so many different areas in the way they attack. In fact, here's Tom Brady on Fox Sports Radio talking about the Lions and the challenges of facing them. Take a listen to this. No question. Yeah, that's going to be a great game on Sunday night. Texans, Lions. Love what Detroit's doing right now. Elsewhere, intriguing game on Sunday. The Jets at 3-6 at the Cardinals, who are 5-4 and have won 3 straight. Now, the Cardinals, this is traditionally a game where they should win based on how they're playing right now, but they're the Cardinals, so they'll probably find a way to blow it. But they've won 3 straight and 4 of their last 5. And the Jets, if they have any hopes of getting back to any type of race in the AFC, they must win the game. And that's what makes that game good, is that you got desperation on both sides. Bo Nix, the rookie for the Broncos, former Duck, is going to get his first chance going up against Patrick Mahomes. The Broncos are going to be at the Chiefs. And for Denver, the game is critical because they're going through this rough 2-game stretch where they had at Baltimore last week. They're at Kansas City this week. If they can find a way to scratch out a win and give the Chiefs their first loss, Denver will be in a prime position to get one of the wild card spots in the AFC. If they drop the game and fall to 5-5, it's a much harder road the rest of the way because they'd have to win the majority of their games. My guess would be that if your team's in the AFC, I don't know if 9 wins is going to do it. You'll probably need 10 wins to get to where you want to be. So we got some good games coming up this weekend, both in college and the NFL. Sean Highkin coming up at 8:20. Chad Doing, Brenden Slaughter, Rip City Mornings. All right, Rip City Mornings. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer Insider, will join the show coming up at 8:20. I've got more from Tom Brady that we'll get to a little bit later in the show, talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and what makes them unique. And, with the Chiefs, their identity now in terms of how they want to approach games and attack you. And I think what I love most about Patrick Mahomes is he's just about wins. He doesn't care about the numbers, his touchdown to interception ratio, the yardage he's putting up. He just wants to win games. And that's my type of quarterback right there. Patrick Mahomes is the gold standard right now for NFL quarterbacks. And he and Andy Reid are focused on one thing, trying to figure out a pathway to three-peating, which is going to be very difficult. But I've decided right now that if you give me the Chiefs and Lions in the Super Bowl, that'd be a pretty sweet matchup. That's a tasty, tasty treat. I think America would like to see the Lions in there because they're kind of that underdog story in terms of what they've been as a franchise for almost my entire life. They had one really good year in 1991 with Barry Sanders. He was electric. They made it to the NFC title game and they got smashed by the Washington Redskins at the time, who went on to win the Super Bowl. But after that, they've had, a couple of spots in the postseason. Last year was, the best version of the Detroit Lions that we had seen since 1991. And they came up just short. And that was a game they probably should have won. Dan Campbell with some questionable decisions late in the game, and the 49ers with the furious comeback and got the job done. But I think the Lions are fueled by that loss, the embittering loss to the 49ers, and now they have a team with a desire to get to where they couldn't get to last year. Tough losses at the end of a season in the postseason can provide some great motivation for a franchise. And also, I think a tough loss like that can help you, just take a look at everything, do an inventory on who you are, where you're at, and what you need, both as players and coaches and in the front office. And then you can come back and have a chance to do it better. And right now, the Lions look focused. Like I said, if they get home field, hard to imagine a team in the NFC right now, whether it be Green Bay, San Francisco, Philadelphia, or even the Commanders, going in there and finding a way to solve that riddle. That's how good they are. And I'm a big fan of Jared Goff. He was, kicked to the curb by Sean McVay, who thought he couldn't win a Super Bowl with him after he had taken them to a Super Bowl. And so he went out and got Matthew Stafford, and he went to Detroit, where he has found a home. And Dan Campbell has brought an identity and a toughness to that team. And he was thought to be a little bit crazy in his initial press conference because he was, but he's a darn good football coach. Players love him. I mean, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, but he's a tough guy, and his team has taken on his personality. That's what great coaches do. They get players to really play the game the way that they want. And you can see a lot of Dan Campbell and the Lions. So I respect the way they operate. Good football team, explosive. And Jared Goff is, he's not like Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. Like, he's not going to run around and wow you with the scramble plays. But in terms of accuracy and being able to step up in the pocket, deliver the football on time and on target, he's about as good as it gets. Those are beautiful football. Smart guy, too. And his teammates love him because he competes, he prepares, and they look really good right now. So I'm impressed by them. And the AFC is it's a gauntlet. Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, and then you've got other teams who are on the rise. So I'll talk about some of my midseason awards coming up at 7 o'clock as we get ready for another weekend of big-time football, both college and the NFL. So I mentioned the Broncos going into Kansas City. Tonight's game is going to be fun, too. Bengals at 4-5. They've gotten off to a very rough start, but they have a chance to get back to 500 if they can find a way to win at Baltimore tonight. And this game is going to be awesome because, one, the Bengals offense is starting to really come together. And Joe Burrow is a big-time quarterback, and I respect him a great deal. But the Bengals defense has been a disaster. So the question for me with Cincinnati is, can they find a way to have integrity defensively to keep Lamar Jackson from scrambling around and picking up big first downs, big yards with his legs? Can they prevent him from being able to buy time and make plays downfield? The Broncos couldn't last year, and last week, and he killed him. He had a perfect quarterback rating, 158.3, 3 touchdowns. He was sensational. And then for Baltimore, they just went out and made a move to bolster their secondary at the trade deadline. The question I have about Baltimore is, can their pass defense, which is not good, be able to do enough to limit Joe Burrow's opportunities? Meaning, he's going to get yards between the 20s, but can the Baltimore defense tighten up in the red zone? That's the only issue with Baltimore right now. They just got to shore up the pass defense. Number one against the run. I think going into the game last Sunday, they were 30th against the pass, which is odd for Baltimore because we think of the Ravens as a defensive team. John Harbaugh, defense, tough, and they're still piecing it together. Baltimore's a good example, just like Oregon. They're a team that's getting better week by week, but they still have work to do, and they're trying to shore up that pass defense. So I think tonight's game is great. Two great quarterbacks, two teams that uh, have a good rivalry going on in the conference, and I look forward to watching the game. But I enjoy watching great quarterback play. And Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson are two of the best in the league, obviously, and Lamar right now trying to get MVP number 3. Here's Joe Burrow discussing showing emotion. Yeah. See, quarterbacks can't win because if they don't show enough emotion, they get criticized for not showing any emotion. It's like, does he care? But then when a quarterback, because we want our quarterbacks to be corporate because they're kind of the face of the franchise, then when they do show emotion, we think that they need to settle down. Joe Burrow just needs to be himself. He's a great leader and a great player. Um, I'm more interested in some of the outfits and the hairdos and all that stuff, but he's a great player. And I have no issue with the quarterback who wants to show emotion. It wasn't as focused on when I was younger, but dude, there's nothing better than a quarterback, a fiery competitor who shows a little bit of emotion. Tom Brady did it all the time, yelling at coaches, yelling at teammates, throwing his helmet into the bench. I have no issue with that whatsoever. Because when I see that, the way I interpret that is, yeah, that's what I want. I want my guy to care. He's so competitive and wants to win so badly that when it doesn't go right on a series or a drive or whatever, they freak out. Now, I'm not saying you need to be mentally unstable and to where your teammates are just scared of you, but nothing wrong with being fiery. And there's nothing wrong when a guy makes a mistake of pulling him aside on the sideline and getting up in his grill. It's got to be tough as a quarterback because a lot of these interceptions we see, it's not on the quarterback. The receiver's running the wrong route. It's like, dude, I put it in the spot. You ran the wrong route, you moron. But after the game, they've got to take the blame. That's what quarterbacks do. They have to shoulder the blame and say, I've got to play better. And then publicly they do that. And then behind the scenes, you continue to teach and instruct and lead your players. That's what the good ones do. And I like quarterbacks that show emotion. But all the great ones did it. Dan Marino was like, if you were jacking around in Dan Marino's huddle, I mean, he would chew your ass out. Peyton Manning was a very fiery guy. Yeah, he's the funny guy. He's good in commercials, and he's a man's man. Everyone likes him. Everyone loves Peyton Manning. But on the field, man, if you weren't doing things the way that you needed to do them, then he was going to chew you out and get all fiery. And I love that because here's the thing about quarterbacks: if they're putting in the time and they're well prepared, and they're a playmaker, and they're on point, the players on the team are not going to have an issue when a guy like that calls you out or a Joe Burrow shows emotion because they know that that guy puts in the time and puts in the work. And in the end, he wants what's best for you and for the team. What they have an issue with are players who are not accountable, who don't put in the proper study time, who don't practice as hard, and then they call you out on the field. It's like, hey, dude, we see you practice. We know your preparation habits. Don't call me out. Or a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's underperforming, and then he needs to take a play off because he's tired. What are you doing, man? Your offensive line, they've been blocking for your ass all game. They're not taking plays off. The quarterback position is tough. You're expected to be so many different things, and when it's not done perfectly, people will criticize you. But I love Burrow where he's like, hey, you can't have it both ways. All right, he's playing good football. Their defense has been hot trash, but Joe Burrow's money, and he's cool. I'm down with Joe Burrow. All right, we'll come back, and I'll discuss some of my midseason NFL awards. Sean Highcomb will join us at 8:20. Hope you're having a good morning. A beautiful Thursday morning here in the Northwest. Rip City Mornings on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Oh, 7 o'clock chat here. What's up, my friends? Trailblazers are back in action tonight after 2 days off. They'll meet the Spurs down in San Antonio. Tip-off is at 5. Chris Burkhardt will have game day starting at 3. I'll have the Trailblazer pregame show at 4. It's here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Shaden Sharp has been upgraded to questionable, could make his season debut tonight coming off the labral injury. And Robert Williams III, who was cleared in their last game, could make his season debut. He got a DNP against the Pelicans. Our Trailblazers insider Sean Highkin will join the show coming up at 8:20. Ducks continue their pursuit for the unbeaten season. They'll host Maryland Saturday at 4 on the Big Ten Network. Ducks favored by 25. Oregon State is coming off their bye. They're going to host San Jose State at Reese. Kickoff at 12:30, pregame at 10:30 on your home of the Bees, 1190 KEX, and on the CW Network. NFL Prime tonight. Kickoff at 5:15, Bengals at Ravens. All right, what's going on, my friends? Rip City Mornings, Chad doing here along with Brenden Slaughter. We'll talk to Sean Highkin. He'll join the show coming up at 8:20 and get the latest on the Trailblazers as they get ready to take on Wemby and the San Antonio Spurs. Portland is finishing up their 4-game road trip. They have a game tonight and tomorrow. Then they're back home for a game on Sunday against Memphis. And it's all about player development, right? That's what we're looking at, to see how the young guys continue to progress. And so far, I've been impressed by a number of them who've had a chance to play. And, of course, a lot of that comes from the minutes that they're able to get last year. But Donovan Clingan has been a lot of fun. A lot of Blazer fans I run into around town, very excited about Clingan and the way he's played so far. You know, I've done mornings this week during this transition week. And so it's weird when you're used to operating during one particular point in time of the day, and then you come in and do morning. So like yesterday, I was done with work, and I was back on the Vancouver side, and I made a couple of stops, and I was in the grocery store, and I'm running into people. I'm just not used to functioning. I'm usually at work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and so I'm at the grocery store, and I'm running into people, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Chad," and then we start talking about the Blazers, and a lot of people are excited about what they're seeing with Donovan Clingan. So we'll talk to Sean Highkin. He's going to join the show at 8:20. I'll get to my midseason NFL awards here in just a moment, things that are jumping out at me, who I think the MVP should be right now, offensive and defensive rookies of the year, coach of the year. But I want to play J.J. Redick. When he was hired by the Lakers, I like J.J. Redick. The basketball player, I like J.J. Redick. The analyst, the hiring of J.J. Redick was a little bit odd, and because he was doing a podcast with LeBron, and then all of a sudden he's their head coach. And then he and LeBron acted like they had no idea that this was going to happen. LeBron made it sound like he had no involvement in the hiring of J.J. Redick. I just don't like to be lied to. Like, just come out and say, yeah, I am LeBron James. I've been in the league a long time. I'm one of the greatest players of all time. And when I finish out my career, I want to play for a coach I want to play for. That wasn't Darvin Ham. I want to play for J.J. Redick, and I want him to be the coach. Just say that, because we all know that's a fact. But don't act like, whatever. Don't be disingenuous. Just come out and say, yeah, I played a part in J.J. Redick being coach. I played in the game long enough, and I know basketball pretty well. I think he's a good fit for what we're trying to do here. Who's going to have a problem with that? But when you are moving some of the pieces around, but then you act like you have no part in it, it's like, what? Come on, man. And don't jerk me around. Let's just be real here. So I wasn't sure what to make of him being a coach because he had no prior experience, but he's obviously got a very high basketball IQ. But the more I see from J.J. Redick, the more I like. And I think he's got a chance to become a very good coach in the NBA. But I'm really liking his press conferences because there's no BS, man. Like, if you don't get the job done, he's very direct in communicating about what his team does and does not do. And LeBron James last night in that beatdown at the hands of the Grizzlies, he played well, 39 points. JJ, not particularly pleased with the effort from everyone else on the team. Let's take a listen to JJ when asked about LeBron's performance, 39 points last night in the loss to Memphis. I love it, man. I love salty coaches. I love coaches that will call guys out. Yeah, he had 39 last night. He's the oldest guy on the team. He played harder than everyone else. He called the rest of the guys out, and that's good. Yeah, the bottom line with the Lakers is that their number one source right now is Anthony Davis, and without him, it's going to be a struggle. Anthony Davis does so much on both ends, and what they were doing well when they got up to the fast start is they were running everything through Davis. I have a lot of respect for Anthony Davis. His skill set's tremendous, and I like what he brings to the table. So we'll see how things continue to progress. But I like what JJ Redick's doing so far. Um, he looks like he may have the makings of a darn good basketball coach. Which again, if that's the case, then LeBron, take some credit for the fact that you had a hand in hiring a guy that knows what he's doing instead of pretending like you had no part in it whatsoever. I don't know why. Why do people always have to play that game? I guess the reason why you would do it is that if it goes sideways, you don't want to take the blame for the decision making. That would be my guess. But that's my big issue with LeBron is that he's just, I don't know, he's kind of fake. That's all. Great player, but disingenuous. Just be real. The problem is that he's so worried about what everyone thinks about him. That's probably why he wanted to put it out there that I had nothing to do with the hiring of Reddick. Because if it goes bad, people will blame Braun, and he doesn't want that type of criticism because he is very aware of how he's viewed and his legacy. I don't know. It's just weird to me. All right, so the NFL. So we're basically like halfway through the season right now. And, at this time of the year, like I said, the league starts to everything starts to become more defined in terms of the contenders, the pretenders, all that kind of stuff. As I mentioned before, right now in the AFC, it's pretty clear who the top three teams are. Kansas City, they're unbeaten. Buffalo at 7-2 in control of the AFC East. And then after that, you have Baltimore, who currently is second in the AFC North. They're sitting just behind Pittsburgh, who's 6-2. But I think we all agree that the Ravens, with their roster, more importantly, Lamar Jackson, they will overtake Pittsburgh in the AFC North. Now, I'm not going to throw any shade at Pittsburgh because I respect them a great deal, and they're playing good football right now, especially on defense and the way they're running the football. They're getting better quarterback play from Russell Wilson. But, yeah, I think the Ravens are a better football team. So there's three teams in the AFC, and then you have the contenders to try and make some noise. Pittsburgh's one of those teams. I would put Houston in that category, and then to a lesser degree, the LA Chargers. I think what you're going to have is it'll be a combination of the Chargers and Broncos, battling for that last playoff spot in the AFC, but that's where we're at. So that would be Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Houston, Kansas City, Denver, and then there's another team to throw in there. Maybe it's Cincinnati if they can get a win tonight because they're getting close to the 500 mark. I think the Colts are going to be a factor in the postseason race now that they've kind of solidified their decision going with Joe Flacco at quarterback. They'll get better decision making and playmaking from that position. So that's kind of what we're looking at. In the NFC, it's really Detroit and everybody else right now. Washington and Philadelphia are definitely playoff worthy. Detroit's the best team. Minnesota's legit, as is Green Bay. Atlanta right now is leading the NFC South. They will probably be the only team in from that division, maybe Tampa. I like the way Baker Mayfield's playing. And in the NFC West, Arizona right now leads the division. Right behind them, Rams, 49ers, both sitting at 4-4. So it's a little more wide open in the NFC in terms of those other teams battling. But I think Detroit is right now head and shoulders above everybody else, including San Francisco, including Minnesota and Green Bay. So, anyways, here we are at the halfway mark. And right now, if I were to give out some mid-season NFL awards, let's start with Coach of the Year. I'm going to pick Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin has done a heck of a job so far this year. His team leads the division. They're sitting there at 6-2. I don't think they're going to win the division, but I don't care. I respect Mike Tomlin. That team is playing terrific defense. They run the football. They have an identity. They know who they are. And then he had the wherewithal with his team sitting at 4-2. Justin Fields began the year at quarterback. And for what they were asking of him to do, he did a good job. And he won 4 out of 6 games using his athleticism, minimizing the mistakes or the turnovers. But the problem is they didn't have much of a downfield passing game, so the offense was bogging down. And Mike Tomlin made the switch to Russell Wilson. Now, the majority of people thought it was a bad idea and did not expect him to make that move. And they were curious as to why he decided to do it when he did it. Well, Russell Wilson has gone 2-0 since he went into the starting lineup. But most importantly, the offense has looked better because Russ has brought an element of a downfield passing game to the offense, which has opened up the running game for Najee Harris. So it takes guts to be able to make those type of decisions. It also requires conviction as a head coach who's confident and comfortable in his role and knows his team to be able to step up and say, this is my call. I'm making the decision because I believe this is what we need. Even when you're getting criticism or people questioning your decision-making, you've got to have the conviction to be able to move forward with what you think is best. You can take everyone's input. You can have a discussion about it, but in the end, it's your decision. And Tomlin made his choice, and so far it's proven to be the right one. It takes guts to do that. So Mike Tomlin right now would be my Coach of the Year. And there are plenty others on that list who are deserving of consideration. Dan Campbell being right up there near the top. Andy Reid won't get it because he's got Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs have won back-to-back Super Bowls, and people are tired of that. But Andy Reid, the reason why I think Andy Reid is near the top, along with Dan Campbell, and I mentioned this, but Reid's ability to be flexible and adjust on the fly based on the players that he has access to on offense. If they have the speed outside and they got Tyreek Hill, they're going to throw it downfield and be a big play offense. If they have youth at receiver and guys who don't know the offense, who only understand a portion of the playbook, they're going to be more of a ball control type attack. We're going to run the football, short passes, and we'll lean on Patrick Mahomes to do what he does on third down. And we have great defense, so we're going to lean on the defense, and we'll play field position. That's pretty awesome for Andy Reid to be able to do it the way he does it. He is solidifying his place in history as one of the greatest coaches of all time. He's impressive, and he's doing a heck of a job. But because he's got Patrick Mahomes and because they're the Chiefs, he won't get the credit for it. So Mike Tomlin right now, my Coach of the Year, basically for having big balls. And then right behind it right now, Dan Campbell and Andy Reid. My offensive rookie of the year, Jaden Daniels, Washington Commanders. Now, when the draft hit, we all looked at the quarterbacks, and, of course, me too. I didn't think it was a question. Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the draft. You take him, and as the Bears, you celebrate because for the first time in ever, you have a legitimate quarterback. And I think he is going to be a big-time player. But Jaden Daniels having a better year. And the Commanders, with a new ownership group, new coaching staff, basically a brand-new start-from-scratch situation, are in prime position to make the playoffs. And right now they're atop the NFC East sitting at 7-2. They have a perfect record at home. Jaden Daniels is accurate, incredibly efficient. He's a playmaker. He's proven to be a good leader young in his career. I'm a big fan of what he's doing. So right now, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jaden Daniels. Coach of the Year right now, Mike Tomlin. I'll get to more of my awards when we come back. Rip City Mornings. Don't forget our Trailblazers insider, Sean Highkin, coming up at 8:20. All right, Rip City Mornings. Chad doing Brenden Slaughter with you. Sean Hiking coming up at 8:20. Hope you're enjoying your morning. I'm liking this sunshine that's popping through the window right now here in the studio. All right, big games coming up this weekend. Blazers back in action tonight. Tip off against the Spurs at 5. They're down in San Antonio. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 3 o'clock. I was talking about my mid-season NFL awards right now, and I gave you my first two. I've got Mike Tomlin, Coach of the Year with the Steelers, for having convictions, for knowing his team, and having the guts to put Russell Wilson in. And they're overperforming right now, leading their division at 6-2. Now, do I think Pittsburgh's coming out of the AFC? No. Do I think they're going to get to the AFC title game? Probably not. But they're a factor. And I just love their operation, the way they play. And I love Mike Tomlin. And look at the way that team's playing. They're smart. They're tough. They have an identity, and he had the guts to make the move to Russ, which has made the offense better. And he made the decision in the face of people questioning him and criticism. But as he pointed out, that's why I'm compensated really well to make these type of decisions. He's a very confident man. I respect him. My offensive rookie of the year, Jaden Daniels from Washington, having a terrific season, very efficient, very accurate, and has just done a heck of a job with that team. And that's a new ownership, new front office, new coaching staff, everything. And yet Jaden Daniels has come in and has shined out. And I'm a big fan of Jaden Daniels. Watched him a lot during his career at ASU. I've seen him live numerous times. Impressed by his downfield passing ability and his leadership. Ever since he was a youngster, a freshman at ASU, he's been making big-time plays. And he's been great for Washington this year. The Commanders are going to the postseason, and they might win the NFC East, which for me is a shocker. But he looks good. Jaden Daniels is nice. And so far, he's been the best of the quarterbacks that were selected in the first round of the NFL draft. Caleb Williams is making progress. Bo Nix is making progress. But without question, Jaden Daniels is the guy. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going to have to lean to Jared Verse of the LA Rams. Just his overall play at linebacker. He's great in terms of explosion plays, tackles for loss, getting pressure. I think he's got well over 20 pressures now. He's a little bit older. I think he's 23, but he's really smart, great speed, and a good player. And he's been terrific. And the Rams, with all the struggles they've been through, they're right there in contention in the NFC West. But I would put Jared Verse right at the top for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Terrific player. He's been great. And he was big time last year at Florida State. Elsewhere, for my award list, Defensive Player of the Year is J.J. Watt. And I still can't believe it. I learned this last year because he hit the mark last year, but he leads the all-time mark in Steelers history in sacks. And that's pretty impressive when you consider some of the defensive players that they've had. But J.J. Watt is a one-man wrecking machine. He creates pressure. He's a big-time player. He's incredibly durable. I mean, he can wreck a game all by himself. He's awesome. J.J. Watt is an awesome player, and he's having a big-time year. He is, without question, the best. And for my MVP right now, it's Jared Goff. Jared Goff, Detroit Lions. Lions are the best team in the NFC, and Jared Goff is playing at a ridiculously high level right now. Accuracy, decision-making, efficiency. He's just running the offense at a high level. I'm a big fan of Jared Goff. And I love seeing guys who get tossed aside. And because it was Sean McVay, everyone's like, well, maybe Jared Goff's not very good. I just don't understand how a guy as smart as Sean McVay could look at a guy like Jared Goff and think, I can't win with him. I can't get over the top with him. He just took us to a Super Bowl, but he's not the guy that I need to get over the hump. Isn't that weird? Now, it worked out. I mean, he went out and got Matthew Stafford and won a Super Bowl. So it's hard to argue with his decision-making and how it played out for the Rams. But the Detroit Lions ended up with an absolute stud. So I'm just impressed by Jared Goff. The way he handles himself, he's been great in that city. I think his personality and approach and the way he handles things, it's worked out really well. But Jared Goff right now is playing at a incredibly high level and very productive, doesn't make the big mistake, accurate, and right now the Lions are on a pathway for the Super Bowl. So there you have it. That is my list of awards right now in the NFL. Jared Goff, MVP, Mike Tomlin, Coach of the Year, Jaden Daniels, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jared Verse, Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then J.J. Watt, right now, Defensive Player of the Year. Elsewhere in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, what is it that makes them so tough? Their identity, how they play. Here's Tom Brady on Fox Sports Radio talking about the Chiefs and what he's seeing, because a lot of people are trying to figure out, who are the Chiefs? What is their identity? Take a listen to Tom Brady talking about Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs, the only unbeaten team that remains in the NFL. All right, there's Tom Brady talking about the Chiefs. Boy, they're so good right now. And I think Patrick Mahomes has like 11 touchdowns and 9 picks on the year. He's completing 69% of his passes, throwing for about 240 yards per game. But who cares about numbers? It's all about the wins. And I respect that, because that's the way Elway was. It wasn't about the numbers. It's like, okay, did we get the win? Are we doing whatever it takes to win the football game? And that's what the Chiefs are focused on, because they want a three-peat. And, Brenden was talking about it yesterday. It's so hard to do. It's never been done in the modern era to go 3 straight Super Bowls, but it would be cool to see. And as much as I hate to admit it, I'm pulling for it, because I'm a big fan of Patrick Mahomes. But this is what makes the Chiefs so tough. One, Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, is so good at what he does, and he's got great synergy with Andy Reid. And Spagnuolo, this is what the Chiefs and their dynasty, what makes them so tough. Spags is one of those guys, they hire him and bring him in. He's had his run as a head coach, so he's not going to jump anywhere else to become a head coach at this stage in his career. So he and Andy Reid will continue to be joined at the hip. So you have strength and continuity in the coaching staff. And then when you have coaches who have been in place for an extended period of time, you're running the same system. So when young guys come in, you have other veterans who have been there that know the system inside and out, because you have the same defensive coordinator. And it's easier for the vets, along with the coaching staff, to help get the younger guys up to speed so they can continue to go out and execute the way that they do. And we saw this last year with the Chiefs. They won games with their defense because they had a young receiving core. This year, they've been beat up by injuries. They were very smart to go out and get DeAndre Hopkins at the deadline. And, Hopkins, he had 2 touchdowns in his debut the other night against Tampa, but he doesn't even know the offense yet. So as time goes on in his work with Patrick in the offense, he'll get up to speed, and they'll bring him along. But the Chiefs, without the great speed on the outside, with some of the injuries they've had at receiver, they can just continue to play ball control. And this goes back to Andy Reid being very flexible or pliable, having the ability to adjust on the fly and call an offense that is best suited for the players that he has. And for Patrick Mahomes, being able to check his ego and say, okay, it's not about numbers. We're trying to win a third straight Super Bowl. So how do I need to play to complement the players that we have to put us in the best position to succeed? And that's why I love Tom Brady. Tom Brady was the same way. He put up big numbers, but each year was different with the Patriots. And like he said, sometimes we had great offensive strengths, sometimes it was defense. But Tom Brady was willing to play a game in any way, shape, or form to go out and win. So if it meant he needed to play a ball control offense that was built around the run and they were going to rely on the defense, then he was willing to throw it away on third down, punt the football, and play field position because he knew that that approach at some point would break and put them in a position to win the game. And not everyone's like that. A lot of guys in all sports are about the numbers, putting up certain numbers, scoring a certain number of points, throwing for a certain number of yards, and whatever. But for teams, for winning teams, good organizations, you have coaching staff and the players who focus on whatever it takes to win. What can I do to best serve my team, even if it means that I may have to sacrifice some of my numbers?
The thing I think is also impressive about that, Chad, is you look at what Andy Reid's been able to do with his assistants, and it's kind of something that's glossed over and cliche, but you go back a couple years ago when the Eagles made the Super Bowl, their coordinators were gutted. Jonathan Gannon went to Arizona. Shane Steichen went to Indianapolis. Both those guys still had coaches. This last year, it was a huge deal that Detroit did not lose Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator. I'm drawing a blank on their DC right now, who was also in the mix for things as well. And then what you mentioned with Andy Reid, it takes me back to Andy Reid. Brady there, giving Spags a lot of credit, and he obviously does. Spagnuolo was the guy who arguably helped shut down that '07 Patriots offense when it was an elite offense as the Giants DC. But just how valuable is it, Chad, compared, looking at the Chiefs compared to the Lions, that if you're Andy Reid, there is zero to little risk that your coordinators are ever going to leave. Spagnuolo, been there, done that. I don't know if being a head coach is his desire anymore. Then on the other side of the ball, who is really wanting Matt Nagy? Just asking for a friend. So, when you can keep that continuity, I think it's very underrated.
No, it is. Continuity is critical in football. It's important on the offensive line. It's important in the coaching staff. And I think Philly's a great example. Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen are two of the very best. And Philly's coach, Nick Sirianni, is a lunatic. And so
that's a way to put it.
No, it's true. He is. He's crazy.
He's an odd duck.
So, when you have continuity on the staff, it really helps. And Spagnuolo's not going anywhere. Aaron Glenn is the defensive coordinator for the Lions.
Thank you. Yeah, he's. I would be shocked if either one of those guys don't get jobs this offseason. That's how good they are. And, how long can you kind of sit on that if you're Dan Campbell, right, Chad? Because there's lots of other teams who are like, hey, we want some of that positivity for us, looking particularly down in New Orleans right now.
No, it's so true. One other thing I want you to hear from Tom Brady, one thing he's big about is, he knows quarterbacking, obviously. He's the GOAT. And he's concerned about the quarterback development in the NFL, and in particular going back to college, where he doesn't think quarterbacks are being developed, the way that they should. Here's Tom Brady sharing his thoughts on QB development. All right. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And we're seeing it with Bo Nix right now in Denver. Obviously I'm a Bronco fan, but, what I'm paying attention to with Bo right now is footwork. A couple of different things, just the details that I'm learning from these quarterback coaches, with Bo Nix, learning how to use his feet properly, set his feet, making sure his base is solid, making sure that he's not too narrow in his stance, making sure his shoulder angle is proper, so that when you deliver the football, you can be accurate with your throws. But for a lot of these college quarterbacks, they're in gun most of the time, shotgun. And when they get the ball, it's coming out so quick. With a lot of these teams in college, their first read is open. The first guy they're throwing to is usually open. And if they're throwing one of these short passes or screen game or whatever, they get rid of the football. And therefore, they're not being forced to, one, focus as much on the fundamentals, the footwork, or having to work through their progression. So when you get to the NFL level and the talent you're going up against is so much higher and the defenses are much more complex, there's a process to go through. And not to mention the speed of the game. And so it is important. I'm big on quarterback development. I'm big on quarterback play because that's vital for the league. Because when you have great quarterback play, the games are good. It makes for exciting football, and obviously the quarterbacks are the stars, and that's what people gravitate towards. And it's great to see this young crop of QBs coming to the NFL. So Jaden Daniels becomes a star. Caleb Williams is making progress. Bo Nix is making progress. And they can come in and continue to develop and play at a high level and join Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and the rest. And then before you know it, you have a league that's filled with great quarterbacks. That's what we need because we all care about quarterbacks. There's nothing I hate more than trying to sit down and watch a game and you look at the teams that are playing and then you're like, ugh, the quarterback matchup, it's hideous. So there you have it. There's Tom Brady. He's getting better as a broadcaster, too. It was rough the first couple of weeks, but getting better. He's too obsessed with being great not to work his way into continuing to figure out how to do that the
Do you
right
think there's
way.
any part of his life, Chad, that he doesn't just look to dominate? I mean, he's probably driving, and he's like, okay, I got to get in front of this person to get. I mean, I imagine Tom Brady's obsessive, compulsive, competitive, making his breakfast shake. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't surprise me.
No, he is. Perfection. He strives
good
for
way
it.
to put it.
All right, Sean Hiking coming up at 8:20. Hope you're enjoying your morning. Rip City Mornings here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, I'll get to Mike Gundy, head coach at Oklahoma State. He had some comments for criticism he's receiving. And then the apology that he probably doesn't really mean that came afterwards. The Cowboys are struggling right now. I'm always interested in it because my dad's alma mater is Oklahoma State. And I've got a lot of family back in Oklahoma. Some are which are Sooner fans. Some are Cowboy fans. My uncle's frustrated with Mike Gundy. But the guy they're 3-6 this year. They've lost 6 straight. But outside of 2005, which was his first year, they've had nothing but winning seasons since. And his success rate at Oklahoma State's been tremendous. He's been great. So he's the winningest coach in program history. He went 4-7 in his debut back in 2005. And he's led them to a bowl game in every season since. And they even played for the Big 12 championship last year against Texas. So I don't know why fans would be frustrated with that. How many schools would be happy to have, basically 18 consecutive years of going to a bowl game?
Be an alma mater, one of your own. Like as a fan of a program where a coach didn't show loyalty and jumped at the first sign of things being tough, I credit Mike Gundy for sticking through with the pokes all these years. And they've had some good moments. I mean, you go back, this is not just like recent. I mean, throughout his tenure, from Brandon Whedon to, Mason Rudolph, there's been guys, been talent. It's a down year. It happens. Maybe the portal didn't hit for him, but the idea of firing the mullet, Chad, that would, I think, be a bit of a knee jerk, even in a tough, I get it. You can't have a year like that, but I think it'd be pretty knee jerk if you're asking me.
All right. When you were talking about coaches, alma mater, you're referring to Jonathan Smith at Oregon State.
I am. Yes. The turncoat.
Okay. So you said that he didn't show loyalty to the program. So here's my question for you, and for all Beaver fans who are still frustrated by that. So Jonathan Smith, he comes in at a time where the program was as low as it had ever been after Gary Anderson, who was a complete disaster. He quit. He stunk. He was terrible. So Jonathan Smith comes in, lays a foundation, rebuilds the entire program, and brings them back to prominence. It was an impressive coaching job, retool job. Jonathan Smith was awesome. And when he came on board and took the job, he's like, hey, I know what it takes to win here. I have won here. And he goes, I love Oregon State. I love Corvallis. And he's the only guy that could say that where I'm like, I really believe him. So he does all the work and gets them back to prominence. And then for things that were out of his control, the school no longer had a conference. The future was definitely uncertain. And he gets an opportunity to go to a premier conference and take over a program in a situation where he has a better opportunity to win and take care of his assistant coaches. So if he comes in and rebuilds the program and takes it to a brand new height and leaves it in a better place than where it was when he arrived, how is he being a turncoat? Seriously.
No, everything you say is not wrong, Chad. But being Oregon State, we pride ourselves on being blue collar. We're never going to be the fanciest or the flashiest.
Well, I understand that, but everything he did there with the rebuild of the program was blue collar from the ground up.
It was. Chad, I'm sure you've heard this narrative too. I think Beaver, this is something that has been in life for as long as it can be. How many times have you been told in your life, or whatever, that when things get tough, you don't quit?
But he didn't quit. He did not quit on his team.
With the performance the last 2 weeks, I beg to differ. The team knew before the CW he had took the job. That's quitting. Now, again, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I share that opinion with a lot of Beaver fans who would say...
But he didn't quit on the team. He accepted an opportunity to go coach elsewhere. And unfortunately, for all the coaches, because of the way the hiring cycle works, you have to jump on. If you're going to go to a different program, it has to happen quick because these schools are trying to make a decision to get their new coach on board because of how the recruiting cycle works. So that, again, that's...
I get that, but
okay.
Like I said, it's you asked, and I said this is why if he ever came back to Corvallis, he'd be persona non grata. It's just... And that's why I think a lot of Beaver fans, myself included...
But I'm trying to understand why, though. He did great work. Where would the program be if he wouldn't have come back and laid the foundation and rebuilt the program?
Oh, I don't disagree. I think you have to bifurcate. Great word on this.
I know, but I'm trying to figure this out, though. Like, okay, so he comes back and he does great work to rebuild the program, but then, okay, so he had an opportunity. His priority number one is to take care of himself and his family.
Which he could have done with his salary at Oregon State for the rest of his life.
Not at the level that he could at Michigan State.
Sure, but
But I'm saying
yeah.
His job is to do what he thinks is best for him and his family first. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so he made a decision that he thought was best for him and his family after years of great work at Oregon State. So I just think people that are frustrated at Jonathan Smith are crazy because I think he was great for Oregon State, and I think he did a great job. And I believe that had the team had a conference, a legitimate conference to play in, I don't think he makes the jump to Michigan State.
Yeah, I do not disagree. Nothing you're saying is
wrong.
wrong.
What you're saying is that Jonathan Smith, because he went to Oregon State, and out of the duty of the fact that he's, he went to Oregon State, that's his school, that even if the school has no conference and the move is not better for his family, that in order to show loyalty, he should stay in a situation that he doesn't think is best for himself? That's crazy talk.
My thing was he should have stayed until...
Until when?
I said a year. You should have at least given it a year and not left at the lowest point. And that's why I think you saw so many fans rally around Trent Bray when Jonathan Smith was like, hey, Trent, get on the plane. And he's like, why would I do that?
Well,
I think there's... loyalty is a big thing, Chad, especially at a place like Oregon State where you aren't going to be the biggest winner, most likely. You have to grind for things. And I just think a lot of Beaver fans kind of felt betrayed, backstabbed, whatever you want to call it. Not saying all, but, like someone like me, Chad, I enjoy seeing the Michigan State fan base already turning on him. So, and I'm not alone in Beaver fans. So, call that cynical, call it whatever it is. I'm not saying my way is the right way. It's just how I think.
Well, he took over a rebuilding job at Michigan State, too. So, just like it did at Oregon State, it's going to take time.
Sure.
Do you have any doubts that he's going to turn it around there, too?
The problem I see there is that they've got so many big hitters ahead of them, just on its surface. Michigan State will never have more resources or be picked ahead of Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon.
So basically, he took over a program in Michigan State just like he did at Oregon State. That's never going to be picked ahead of anyone else in the conference.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the frustrations too, Chad. And I, again, just the way it works, if he had waited and say it was, the UCLA job that he took off with once Chip Kelly left, I think a lot of Beaver fans would have been like, okay, he's going home. That makes some sense, But when you're going to a bottom tier Big Ten school, and again, I think that's part of the frustrations is the fit still didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. A guy who doesn't have any Midwest coaching connections and so on and so forth. He seems destined to be back to the West Coast. I always thought it'd be Washington or UCLA.
What do you mean destined to be back to the West Coast? He's in his first year.
Sorry?
He's in his first year at Michigan State. Why do you think he's destined to be back on the West Coast?
I just think he's a West Coast guy. I just think in general, I don't think it will ultimately work out at Michigan State. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's short-sighted of me. But I think eventually it will circle back, and he will eventually be coaching somewhere here on the West Coast again. Maybe that's in the Big Ten. Maybe that's in a different conference. But I just don't see him being able to beat those heavy hitters. Because he didn't in Corvallis, Chad. You go back the last 2 years. His best team's in Corvallis.
Oh, so now we're going to take shots at his work at Oregon State.
Well, no, I'm just saying, that good, maybe not great. Couldn't get over the hump with the good. And I'm not saying Oregon State has ever. Historically, Mike Riley couldn't get over the hump either in his last couple years, and Oregon State didn't go to the Rose Bowl or a bigger bowl game. So, you look at the last 2 years, Oregon State was borderline really, really good, 10 wins, 8 wins. They had chances against Washington and Oregon, but just couldn't quite deliver.
Well, I think you and the rest of the Oregon State fan base that criticize Jonathan Smith are butthurt and being crybabies. That's my honest assessment. Jonathan Smith did great work. I have nothing but respect for him. And in the end,
I think you'd have a different take if you were a diehard Beaver for your entire life, John.
No, I wouldn't. I absolutely would not. I love Jonathan Smith. I think he's awesome, but he did great work. He rebuilt the program and did a heck of a job. And he left because the school had no conference to play in. It was not a good situation. So he took the situation moving forward that he thought was best for him and his family, his number one priority. You guys are crazy, Beaver fans. Gary Anderson runs the program into the ground. Jonathan Smith resurrects the program, but he's a quitter. Oh, gosh. All right, we'll hear from the mullet, Mike Gundy, when we come back. Sean Hyken's coming up at 8:20. Loyalty. Ugh. All right, Rip City Mornings. Chad Doing, Brenden Slaughter with you. All right, 8 o'clock, college football this week, and the Oregon Ducks will continue their pursuit of the Big Ten title game. They're going to host Maryland Saturday at 4. It's going to be on Big Ten Network. Ducks favored by 25. Oregon is unbeaten, ranked number 1 in the country. Oregon State will host San Jose State. Kickoff at 12:30, pregame at 10:30. Here on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KX. You can watch it on the CW network. Trailblazers tonight will take on the Spurs down in San Antonio. 5 o'clock tip. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 3. And it's on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Shaden Sharp's been upgraded to questionable. Could make his season debut tonight, coming off the Layerville tear. And our Trailblazer insider, Sean Highkin, will join the program coming up in 20 minutes. All right, big shout out to Tony in Boring, big listener of the program. He has an award. He says that Matt Eberflus, midseason award, worst coach in the NFL. Tony's a Bears fan, so he's a little bit bitter right now. But I think he's also a Duck fan, so he should be happy about the Ducks and the way they're playing football right now. Also, he says today is his 26th wedding anniversary. Quote, good Lord, I'm an old bastard. So, Tony, happy anniversary, my friend. It's great to hear from you. Sean Highkin's coming up in 20 minutes. We're going to hear from Mike Gundy ripping on some of the Cowboy fans for the criticisms and then the apology. Again, the same thing I said about Jason Kelsey with that apology that he gave at the start of the Monday Night Football broadcast because he grabbed that phone and smashed it when he was at the Penn State-Ohio State game. When that idiot yelled at him talking about his brother Travis and called him a gay slur for dating Taylor Swift. Well, he got ticked and crushed the phone, and he apologized for it. Oh, why should you apologize for that? The guy was out of line. And, yeah, you probably could have handled it maybe a little bit different than smashing the phone, but I think most people would agree that your reaction was understandable. You don't need to apologize for that. And Mike Gundy apologizes, but I don't think he had to. So I'll play the audio for you, and then you can tell me. Brenden and I were just having a discussion about the Oregon State Beavers and Jonathan Smith's lack of loyalty. You know, Brenden, I think the other thing that Jonathan Smith was probably looking at as well is, you know, certain coaches, they take certain programs to a height, and then they probably look around and realize, like, this is about as good as I can get here, and they're ultra competitive, and they want to put themselves in a position to compete for more. And the reality is Michigan State, he's got a better chance to get into the playoff and make a run at a national championship than he does at Oregon State. And I think coaches are always looking for a way to continue to put themselves in a position to compete at the highest possible level. So if you have a chance to go to the Big Ten, you can play for a school that's already been to a playoff, that if you recruit well and build the right team, it wouldn't be every year, but you can occasionally put yourself in a position to compete for a national championship. So I understand that well for those coaches who are ultra competitive.
I mean, it's like I said, this is nothing new, Chad, for me. And just being honest, you're
nothing new. Like in what do you
like
mean by
just
nothing
my
new?
like you're not going to change my opinion on this. Like it is what it is. And we've been out of this for almost a year now, and I'm still as feverishly passionate about him leaving.
So if he would have stayed and coached the team this year and navigated him through the first year of not having a conference as they try to piece it together, and then decided to leave after this year, you would have respected that maneuver?
I would have more. I would have. Maybe that's just how my brain works. But with like last year, Chad, with the conference collapsing, knowing that you look at Washington State last year, the year that was, it affected them on the football field. They had a 4-8 season. They had a really bad year. All the outside noise got in. Oregon State was able to keep that at bay for most of the season, but then the rumors of, his departure were starting to creep up during the bye week, and then the sprint end of the season was terrible. They were overmatched and underprepared in some games, and I think a lot of Beaver fans felt like he had his eyes elsewhere before the season was over. And again, right or wrong, we all knew what was going down before that Civil War game was played at Autzen. So, to your point, if he had stuck around for a year and then after this year been like, okay, this new Pac-12 with Boise State, Colorado State, so on and so forth, isn't for me. I'm going to look at something else. Yeah, I think there would have been more Beaver fans that would have respected it, but we can we can go back and forth on it forever. It is what it is, and everyone. It's like another thing, Chad. Everyone's got an opinion.
Yeah, even if it's wrong. You and the rest of Beaver fans are crazy people. Crazy people.
And
Gosh.
hey, this wouldn't be at the top of the forefront either, Chad. This has been a real tough year for Beaver fans too. So I think that's kind of a part of it too, as they look and kind of see the disaster that this season has been in some regards, and was a direct result of being gutted at the end of last season.
Yeah, but how has this season been a disaster for the Beavs? How is that?
Well, let me put it. The last 3 weeks have been 4 weeks, I guess, if you include the bye week, have been brutal. Basically, since they went to Reno, there has been very little to hang your hat on.
That's because they're decimated by injuries.
Right. That's but doesn't change the fact it's still tough, and fans are still, dealing with it. Like, again, it's a team that won 18 games over the last 2 years, and now they're going to be lucky to get to 6. So I think that's kind of led to some frustrations. Like you said, the injuries, you can't control that, but there have been a ridiculous amount this year. And they, in my opinion, they missed in the quarterback portal. They went and got a guy in the portal who I don't think is as good as they need him to be. So, there's lots of aspects of that, new coaches, new coordinators, all that. So yeah, it's been an up and down year, with lately Chad being a lot more on the down.
All right, did Damian Martinez quit on the team?
So here's the difference with that. I will never come at a player for leaving. A coach who makes millions of dollars, Chad, what's the difference between $7 or $6 million, or actually $5.5 million at Michigan State versus $3.9 million in Corvallis?
It's a big difference.
But when you're already a millionaire.
No. That's not how people look at it. And you wouldn't look at it like that either. You're going to look at it and say...
we can put me in that position. I'll tell you how I look at it.
Yeah, you would look at an opportunity where over the course of the entire contract, you're going to make a significantly bigger number of dollars. It's the bottom line.
Yeah,
So wait a second. So Damian Martinez, he walked out on the team when they lost their conference and went to a better opportunity. And did he quit?
I don't.
Or was he just capitalizing on his opportunity?
I said everyone has to have a line with this. My line was, if a player is going to go to a better situation to better himself.
But if a coach goes to a situation to better himself.
They don't need the money.
They don't need it?
Players need it. Coaches, I think that's debatable. If you're going from
So now you're trying to tell other human beings, adults, what they need and what they don't need?
You were just trying to turn me around.
No,
out
I'm
here,
not.
Chad.
What if you came to me after the show and said, hey, I've got an opportunity to go to this station. I'm going to leave because I have a chance to make more money. What if I said, well, you don't need that money? What would you say?
Fair enough.
Do you understand
I don't know
saying?
how realistic that is in our industry, but
no. But what I'm saying is that if you had an opportunity, it doesn't even have to be in radio. But hey, I've got an opportunity to go make more money. I'm like, Brenden, you don't need the money. Just stay here. You would think I'm insane for telling you that.
Okay. So let's look at a different example. So guys who leave money on the table in sports. Why is that any different than coaches who should leave money on the table? Like we just saw.
No. I don't think anyone should leave money on the table. I think each individual should make the choice that they believe is best for themselves based on the situation they're in. Meaning, everyone's got different motivations for what they're looking for. Athletes sometimes will choose money, number one. Sometimes it might be a team and a situation and a coach based on what they think is going to be best for their career. Sometimes it might be moving back closer to home because their wife might be from a particular area of the country. Motivations change throughout the course of your career based on the decisions you're going to make. So I think you should make the decision in that moment that you think is best for yourself. We don't know what the main motivating factor was for Jonathan Smith. Money could have played into that. It also could have played into resources to make sure that he takes care of his assistant staff the way that they need to be taken care of because coaches are incredibly loyal to one another.
To your point, his significant other was ready for a change. So that's another factor of it.
Okay. So if your wife comes to you and says, hey, I'm ready for a change, is he supposed to say, look, I'm going to remain loyal to the program because I took the job and I need to see it through for another year. I understand, honey, that you want to change, but that's not good enough for me. We're going to remain loyal. No, you're going to listen to your wife and the input that she has to offer up.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I guess I'm happy that Oregon State has
You should
a
be
bachelor
happy.
coach now
You
with
should
no
be
kids,
thankful.
Chad.
You should be thankful that Jonathan Smith took over the program when he did. The way you should look at it is to say, thank God Jonathan Smith took over the program at its lowest point after
So
Gary Anderson ran it into the ground and rebuilt it up into something
you're not
productive.
wrong. I just remember sitting in a Autzen Stadium tent, freezing my ever-living tail off, and being told to my face, no decisions have been made, when in reality, your wife was packing up the house, you were boarding the plane the next morning. So you lied to me. So I just, he's a turncoat, man.
Well, it's because of the way the situation's set up. They have to play that game. My guess is his agent was looking for other opportunities when the year began or before the year began because they knew what was coming. My guess is that the plans of looking for other opportunities came well before the Civil War. That was in the works for probably 6 to 8 months. That'd be my rough guess. So it didn't happen overnight. It was something they were looking at, paying attention to other potential opportunities that were out there because they knew that the program was going to be in a bad spot. So, yeah. So as an agent should do, hey, coach, your school's about to have no conference. That may not be good for your viability moving forward. Do you want me to look at other opportunities? Yes. Pay attention to what's out there.
So you don't think that's because the agent wanted his cut out of that? Because Jonathan had 3-4 more years left on his deal, and Scott Barnes put a new contract in his face that he would not sign. So
But I'm not going to begrudge someone for jumping on more money either. There's nothing wrong with that. You got a chance to make,
depends on what you want. I mean, I guess I would look for it as like, I think my standard of living would be a lot better in Corvallis than East Lansing, Michigan. But, neither here nor there. Everyone's got to do what they think is best. Our tap water's a little better, too.
All right, Beaver fans, you guys continue to do what you do. Jonathan Smith did great work and should be applauded for it. Now, I do want to play, here's Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State. Criticizing fans who are frustrated with the 6-game losing streak. Now, keep in mind, he has taken them to 18 straight postseasons. He had one losing season first year, 18 straight bowl games, and now they dropped 6 straight. They're in a transition year, and Coach Gundy got a little salty. Let's take a listen. There you go. What do you think about Coach Gundy talking about people that can't pay their bills?
That's a loaded statement, I'll say that. Definitely interesting. But, Gundy's always been one. This is a guy who, made some waves during COVID, too. Like, he's going to do what he wants. You know what I mean? And I do respect and appreciate. Like Mike Gundy is unapologetically Mike Gundy. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and he's not a quitter like Jonathan Smith. He's stuck with the program through thick and thin.
you know, I'll say this, he might have had the benefit of having a little bit more T. Boone Pickens money. Like, not every situation is as it seems. But yeah, I mean, the mullet is extremely loyal.
I mean, don't you think it gets exhausting trying to run a football program on a shoestring budget?
100%. I'm not saying, Chad, that I wouldn't do the same thing in the shoes. I'm just saying from where I sit, as a reporter that covers the program and talks to the radio people 5 days a week, that's just the opinion I have. So,
okay, I want to read a text that came in from my buddy Kurt. He says, I get what Brenden is saying. Beaver fans need someone to blame in the wake of the Pac-12 collapse. They don't know Larry or George, but they intimately know Smith. He left them when they were at their lowest, facing the reality of the fact that, one, they aren't elite, and two, they don't belong with the elite. How accurate is that statement?
It's a very accurate statement. It's true. You again, Chad, if you've
because Jonathan Smith's not the one to blame here because he had no control over the stupidity of the people running the conference.
Agreed. No, totally.
So obviously, when things go sideways, you're going to look to someone to point the blame to, right?
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's blame. Blame is one of those things that, like you said, it goes around, and I think your buddy there kind of nailed it. That's probably how a lot of Beaver fans feel, is like at their lowest point.
But with Trent Bray, for example, he made the decision to stay because he thought that was the best decision for him. But had he decided to get on the plane, and he was offered the opportunity to go to Michigan State, and he thought long and hard about it, but he decided to stay, I don't consider him any more loyal to the program than Jonathan Smith.
Yeah, I disagree. I think
he made the decision to stay because he knew that if he ever wanted to get a taste of being a head coach, that was going to be his only opportunity.
You don't think being a successful defensive coordinator for a Big Ten school would have put him on the short list for some small jobs? I do.
He had said he had never considered being a head coach before.
Agreed, and it's true. He necessarily didn't. But
I don't consider that any more loyal. He just made a decision in the moment that, hey, I've got a chance to be a head coach. I'm going to jump on the opportunity, and he took it.
Yeah, take it from him, right? Like Trent Bray, there was actually a pretty big nugget that got dropped before the Cal game, and I would assume it was the broadcasters' pre-show kind of meetings with the head coaches. And Trent Bray said, I stayed because the end of last year was very difficult. There are people I do not talk to anymore, friends I do not talk to anymore. So there were hard feelings, Chad. And that's what I'm being like. Sure, you can sit there and say it was the right decision for him, coaching, financial, whatever. Still, doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of really upset fans at how it went down. That's all I'm saying.
All right, I got a message from my good friend Miranda. Dear Skunk Vomit, good morning, Mr. Doing. I'm reading today's Oregonian. It looks like iHeart misread the memo. It should be more Mr. Janes and less Chad. And like, Miranda, it will come at some point. Your lifelong dream of me being axed from the radio, it'll happen. I don't know when, but it's coming, and then you can celebrate. So I'm sorry to disappoint you. All right, we'll come back. Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report. Our Trailblazers insider will join us, and we'll focus in on this team. I want to ask him about the Per 36 numbers. We'll get the latest on Shaden Sharp and Robert Williams III. Sean Highkin up next.
in play against New Orleans. I asked a couple of people. He was good to go. Chauncey didn't put him in. So that would be a question for Chauncey. So, I mean, I would think they want to get him back in there eventually. And I think tonight, with them having just had 2 days off, that's even more time for him to kind of get ramped up. I would imagine that, they got to practice in San Antonio because they had that extra travel day. So I would guess yes, but that's a question for Chauncey tonight. Yeah. Which those reporters that are in San Antonio, unfortunately, I am not. That would be a question for one of them to ask him. But he's available to play. He could play. I'm as eager to see him back out there as everybody else is. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was just with you. I was surprised because I felt like they teased us. We got the report he was available, and then he even got the pregame interview. And I thought, well, that's the icing on the cake. We're definitely going to see him, but maybe tonight in San Antonio. I'm just excited to see him play basketball. We're talking to our Trailblazer insider Sean Highkin here on Rip City Mornings. Do you have an update on Shaedon Sharpe and Matisse Thybulle?
I don't really have much on Matisse. I don't really know what's going on with that. I think he's a little bit further away than Shaedon. Shaedon's close. Shaedon potentially, I don't think they have a date on it yet. Potentially this upcoming 4-game homestand that they have that starts on Sunday and goes through the following Sunday against Atlanta. Like, he's close enough that I think there's a chance he goes. He wanted to go 2 weeks ago, but the medical staff is kind of trying to slow him down a little bit and say, okay, let's be super careful with this. But he's pretty, like, as far as everything I've heard has been that's going according to what they originally said the timeline was, which was 4 to 6 weeks, and we're within that. We're past the 4-week mark, so I would think sometime after this road trip. I would be surprised if he plays on the last 2 games of the road trip, but I think not too much longer after that he's going to be back out there.
All right, this might be a question that needs to come in a few weeks, but how do you expect Chauncey to reinsert Shaedon back into the lineup as they kind of ramp up his conditioning when he does come back?
That is a good question. I don't know the exact, what the rotation plan is. I would guess that he probably doesn't start right away, which, going into training camp before he had this injury, I was assuming that he was going to be the starter at 2-guard, and then, he gets hurt, and then Toumani Camara kind of takes that spot in training camp, and I think it would be pretty hard to justify taking Toumani out of the starting lineup. Maybe Shaedon goes in for Avdia, but I don't think that's going to happen right away. Like, I think it's going to be Shaedon off the bench, at least at first, as he kind of gets ramped back up. I don't know if he's going to be under any kind of a minutes restriction or not with this injury, but they'll probably ease him in and then depending on how he looks. Because if he comes out and dominates, then that Chauncey's going to have a decision to make. So I don't know how that's going to shake out. But I guess that's not the worst problem in the world to have, having too many good players that need playing time.
Yeah, especially after what Chauncey experienced last year with all the injuries. But I'll give you some credit, Sean. I've talked with you about this before, even after last season. I wasn't really sure what the best role was for, Scoot Henderson, and you had mentioned about the idea of him coming off the bench. And now that I've seen him in the role coming off the bench, I think it probably helps him because it maybe takes some of the pressure off, but he knows what his role is going to be. And then some of those moments when he comes in with that second unit, he's allowed to have the basketball in his hands where he can be the primary facilitator and decision maker. And I think that probably helps him in his development. How do you see that?
Well, the other thing, you're right about all of that, Chad, but also he's mostly going to be going against the other team's backups and not against their starters. And so that's going to make it easier for him to get into a rhythm. And at this point, with him still at the stage that he's in his development, it's really more about stringing together decent games than anything else, just so that, just to get the confidence up. It's been kind of hit and miss. He's had a couple, he had a good game against the Clippers. He had a good game against that first win against the Pelicans in the first week of the season. He's had a couple of really good games, and then it's been kind of up and down since then. But I think they like the role that he's in right now.
All right, I wanted to ask you about the Rip City Remix. For those who don't know, the Trailblazers added a G League team last year, and they play their home games at Chiles Center. Their schedule kicks off coming up on November 22nd. Chiles Center is a nice place to go watch a basketball game because it's kind of intimate, but you've been out there, and I think for families who don't know, it's a very affordable way to take in a basketball game. You can take the kids and have a good time. What are your thoughts on the setup there with the remix and the games and the way the fans have great access to the players?
Well, it's a really cool setup. I have been to I went to a number of games last year and plan to go to games pretty often again this year. I mean, to your point about families and kids, I don't have the exact prices in front of me, but I think tickets are like $8 or like kids tickets are $5. It's very cheap to go to those games. And it's, if you've ever been to the Child Center, it's a very small college basketball arena. It's basically a high school gym. You're basically watching like almost NBA caliber players play in a high school gym. And it's also, it'll vary year to year. Last year, the Blazers didn't have any of their guys spend extended time down there because of just the amount of injuries that the team had, and the Rayon Rupairs and Chris Murrays of the world, and like their two-way guys, Justin Minaya, all those guys actually needed to play because they had so many injuries that they just needed the bodies. But when you look at, just from a developmental standpoint, like what it did, just in the 1 year sample size of last season, like, Duop Reith plays one game down there and then they're just like, okay, no, you're too good to play for the remix. And then, that was like right around the time of the Robert Williams injury. So now he, had gotten that action, and then he, that helped him when he got called up to be the Blazers' primary backup center. And then, I think, when you look at like Ashton Hagans, who was with the remix all of last year and then gets a two-way when the spot opens up. Yeah. And then, a guy like Tajay Moore, who is on a two-way this year and was on the remix for all of last season. And, it's just a good developmental pipeline for teams to have. And not only that, but like, player development, but also like coaching opportunities. Jim Moran, who was the head coach of the team last year, like got a job with Mike Brown in Sacramento. So it's a good launching point for a lot of people's careers. And it's something that I had felt like for years the Blazers were behind the curve on not having one, because just about every other team in the league had one. And now this year Phoenix added one, and so now literally all 30 teams in the league had one. They were the last one that was kind of a holdout, but it's something the Blazers were behind the curve not having, and it's even just in 1 year, it's really helped them to have it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good business to have a team. And how does this sound for a deal, Sean? Children 2 and under are free and do not require tickets. They have $5 tickets for kids 12 and under in select locations. Or how about this? The family 4-pack, 2 adult tickets, 2 youth tickets, 2 remix snack packs for $40. Where can you get a deal like that in today's world, bro?
And again, you're going to be seeing, not quite like full NBA players, but, and then, last season also, like this is maybe a little bit less of a thing now because the G League Ignite folded, but the G League Ignite came to Portland for 2 games last year to play the remix. And so people who were into like draft scouting, which, was a big part of what the Blazers whole thing was last year, Ron Holland and Matas Buzelis, 2 Ignite prospects who ended up getting picked in the lottery. You could just go see them for $8 or whatever. Yeah,
it's a good deal. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazers insider, is here on Rip City Mornings. Check him out at rosegardenreport.com. All right, a couple of questions around the NBA. The Bucks right now sit at 1-6. Is it going to get worse before it gets better? They're a tough watch right now, Sean.
It's not great, and I think just the Chris Middleton thing, I think, is the big. Obviously, yeah, the Dame Giannis fit hasn't been, I think, as seamless as people maybe thought it was going to be when that trade happened. But Chris Middleton having surgeries on both ankles over the summer, we don't even really know when he's going to be back. And Brook Lopez is older, and they also because of their salary situation and they're being over the second apron, they basically don't really have any avenues to make a trade to bring, more pieces in to kind of change what it is. So yeah, it's, I came into the season thinking, okay, last year was a little bit rough, but these teams, these quote unquote super teams that, usually have kind of a rough go of it the first year, but it'll get better. And I'm a little less optimistic now.
All right. Another question for you. What kind of shape are the Nuggets going to be in when Aaron Gordon returns from his injury?
Well, that's, in the short term, that's tough. Like, that's another team that, they've lost a number of key role players, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope this summer, Bruce Brown last summer. They just, you look at, obviously, Jokic is still the best player in the league. And so as long as they have Jokic and he's healthy and he's playing at the level that he's playing at, like, they're still going to have a chance. But I came into the season thinking this was going to be a bounce back year for them, and I between the injuries and just some of the depth concerns, I don't know if I really see that either.
Well, it's something to pay attention to. I think the two teams you pegged were Milwaukee and Denver. With the new salary cap and the penalties that are involved when you hit that second apron, when you're paying, 2 or 3 stars huge money and you don't have the resources to add to your bench, you lack the depth. And then you know how the NBA season goes because it's long, attrition hits, and all of a sudden you're up against it. It's brutal.
Yeah, and you look at you look at a team like New Orleans, who New Orleans isn't like one of those second apron teams, but you look at how many injuries they've already got, and so like imagine if they were in that second apron, then it's like you can like not even sign buyout guys, you can't trade multiple guys for one guy, and it's just there's a lot of I mean. I kind of think that as time goes on, it's going to be something that team owners use as an excuse to not go over the luxury tax. But it really, it is a real, impediment to GMs who are trying to build a competitive roster.
All right, I've got one more question for you. The Phoenix Suns right now, they're 6-1. They're playing good basketball. I don't know with their roster if that will continue based on what we've seen in the past. But through my eyes, what I'm seeing with the addition of Coach Budenholzer, they're running a much smoother operation. Like, you can tell the difference in coaching. At least I think I can see that with my own eyes. What's your take on what you're seeing from Phoenix?
I like a little bit more of their roster now. I like, I think the rookie Ryan Dunn has had some good minutes. I think, that in the second year of the whole, the Durant, Beal, Booker thing, and to your point with the addition of Budenholzer, I think he's kind of. I think what they're doing makes more sense now. To me, the issue is that, Beal has injury problems. Durant's, usually misses some games every year, and he's, getting older. Nurkic, in some matchups, it just, as we know very well here in Portland, some matchups he's not very effective. Like, how that works in the playoffs, I don't know. But for right now, yeah, they're definitely looking like one of the better teams in the West.
All right. You can follow him on social media at Heiken. Check out his site, rosegardenreport.com. He is our very own Trailblazer insider, Sean Heiken. Sean, appreciate the time. Enjoy the Trailblazers and Spurs tonight, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, good to talk to you, Chad.
There you go. Sean Heiken with the latest report. And Trailblazers tonight will be in action at 5 o'clock tip-off. And game day's coming up at 3. All right, we'll come back, and we'll see if Brendan's got some mailbag questions, and then we can get our Thursday going here. Appreciate your time this morning. Chad doing Rip City Mornings on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, I'm ready for this double duty stuff to end. Tonight, uh, Chris Burkhart's going to handle game day. I will host fifth quarter following the Trailblazer game. So it'll be like old times tonight, little fifth quarter. And then Brenden and I are back here tomorrow morning as well for Rip City Mornings. And then early Trailblazer game tomorrow. So that's what's going on. I'm very much looking forward to Saturday morning so I can get some sleep and then jump right back up and start watching college football. I'm pumped about that. Jacked up to be able to do that. What do we got going on Saturday morning? The great thing about Saturdays, with the way they schedule the games, it's nice when you get a game you want to watch in every single pocket. The 9 a.m. kick leading through the entire rest of the day. Let's see here. Any good games tomorrow?
That does make for a really solid watching Saturday.
Don't you like that when you get the 9 o'clock kick? Like last week was nice because we had Penn State, Ohio State right into the Oregon game, and then you had the rest of Saturday.
It's true. It's when you line it up like that, it's pretty great. But no, to your point, Chad, a little behind the scenes curtain. You gave me a call yesterday, and I was sound asleep, catching up on some sleep, and I would hope. I think you and I will definitely have a little bit of that catch up to do throughout.
I can guarantee you, when I'm done here in a few minutes, I'm going to go home and take a nap because I got to be back up and be down at Moda Center.
What you got to do when you do pull double duty, for sure. So, yeah, definitely sleep is important, as we've determined.
Let's see the pathway here on Saturday. So 9 o'clock kicks. Purdue at Ohio State. Yuck. Miami at Georgia Tech. I'll tune into that. Georgia Tech's good enough to where they can maybe pull one over on good old Mario Cristobal. Florida at Texas at 9. That's okay. West Virginia and Cincinnati in the Big 12 is okay. Navy, South Florida, it's okay. All right, so there's not great games in the 9 o'clock window. Yeah, probably the best one, Miami at Georgia Tech. Just to see what Mario Cristobal, see what his mind is like on Saturday. Early game, he might make more mistakes than normal. And then in that later slot, Georgia at Ole Miss. Okay, 12:30. That's a good one. That's the best game in the 12:30 window. Michigan at Indiana. Iowa State and Kansas. Those games all have playoff implications, as does Clemson at Virginia Tech and Army at North Texas. So numerous games in the 12:30 slot have playoff implications. And we got that game coming up with Army and Notre Dame. How great would it be if Army beat them?
That'd be pretty cool. I'm not going to lie.
What I want is Army to be undefeated, Navy to have one loss, and Army to be playing for an opportunity to go to the playoff. Gosh, that would be so good. That would be the best Army-Navy matchup of my lifetime. San Jose State, Oregon State at 12:30. How's the injuries looking for this weekend's game against San Jose State, Brenden?
It's better. It's better. Oregon State's favored. I would be quite surprised if they don't come out on top on Saturday. Like I was telling Chad earlier in the year, you got 2 more winnable games on the schedule and 2 that are not so winnable. And I think Oregon State needs to sell out on getting those 2 winnable ones.
Okay, so the 4 games remaining, you've got San Jose State at home this weekend, at Air Force next weekend. And then they play home against Washington State, and then they're at Boise State. They can grab 2 games in that 4-game slot and get to 6, right?
Yeah, I mean, Air Force is really bad this year. It's almost like Air Force and Army and Navy took Air Force's success of like the last 20 years and borrowed it for this season. So Air Force is bad, but that's still on the road, so no gimme. And then San Jose, it's Dad's weekend down in Corvallis, following a bye week. If you can't get up for this game and get this one at home, I think it could be indicative of the season being tough, like I mentioned. So I do think they'll get the win this weekend.
Air Force has lost their last 5 ball games. You should go to that game. I've been to multiple games at Colorado State, at Air Force.
Colorado Springs, right?
Yeah, Colorado Springs. The stadium's like it's 6,500 feet above sea level.
Oh, that's cool. It got to be one of the highest, if not the highest.
It sits off Highway 25 up in the foothills, and it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, and it's very easy to get in and out of the stadium. And the setup is really nice. Obviously, the weather's usually sunny there, They always do a great flyover before the game.
That's cool, yeah.
And as you're walking around the concourse before the game, they have this thing called the band pit. And the band is down in this pit. And you can go walk over and look down into the pit. And they're down there jamming out, playing their music.
That's cool.
And the tradition is people take money and they throw it into the pit.
That is cool.
And
That is cool.
And they collect it for the band. Yeah. So Air Force, that's a great scene. I've seen.
That is cool. Yeah. I mean, it's the late in the year this year, but it was one that I circled around just for the intrigue of it. And but I'm not gonna lie, Chad. It was a. You got to understand, despite being the reporter, I still care about my team a lot. And let's say this: it was not a very fun experience down in Reno. So I'm kind of a little gun shy on traveling for this Oregon State team this year.
Are you quitting on them?
No. Not at all.
We don't accept quitters apparently down in Corvallis.
No. I said I'll be there Saturday. Like I just don't know if I'd put my own skin in the game to travel. If you get what I'm saying, that's all I'm saying. And come on, you got to give me an attaboy on that one, man. I mean, did you throw good money after bad, Chad?
I went to back-to-back weeks of Bronco games this year to start the year out. I went to the one up in Seattle, and I went to the one in Denver against Pittsburgh. Two of the worst football games I've seen in the history of my life.
And they have you've got me, checkmate. I'll give you that. But you know what? This stadium conversation inspired a good mailbag. So let's go ahead and get to it real quick here, Chad.
All right, let's do it.
You mentioned Air Force. I randomly had these numbers in front of me. There are two schools who have higher elevations than Air Force for their football stadium. Any guesses?
Higher elevation than Air Force?
Yes.
Get out of here.
One's at 6,900. The other's at 7,215.
Wyoming?
Bingo. Wyoming's number one. Number two is a little obscure. I'd be surprised if you got this one. It is a FCS team.
Montana?
Not a bad guess. Montana does make the list at 15, but no.
Who is it?
Northern Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
I would have never guessed.
Up in, I think they play in Flagstaff.
I didn't know Northern Arizona. I knew it was a little hillier than like Phoenix, but no idea that it was that high. I mean, I don't know, Chad. I've heard that forever. Like, why not? Because we're in the mailbag. Do you think elevation actually matters? Like,
yeah.
Because you hear coaches and players always go, oh, it doesn't matter, and they don't seem to lean into it as an excuse. But when I've been in elevation, it seems a little harder to breathe.
It absolutely makes a difference. The Trailblazers, in their history, the two worst road venues, and it's not even close, Utah and Denver. And what do those two places have in common? Altitude.
That's a good point.
Let's see here. So Michigan State, 4 wins on the season so far. They're at Illinois, home against Purdue, home against Rutgers. They're going to make a bowl too.
My dream, Oregon State goes 6-6. Michigan State goes 6-6. Put them in a bowl game. Let's go.
I'm down for that.
That would be incredible.
All right. Enjoy your day, my friends. We'll be back tomorrow, Rip City Mornings at 6 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Trailblazers tip-off tonight, 5 o'clock, game day at 3. Spurs here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.